Welcome to the Inspiration North podcast, inspiring stories from inspirational people and how they found their passion, their true north. I'm James Eves.
And I'm Michelle Minikin, and this is the Inspiration North podcast.
Today's episode, It All Ends Up Good, with Kev Price. We talk about his hard-won entrepreneurial lessons, the importance of finding great people to work with, and how he found his current adventure.
Kev has more than 15 years of business experience. From co-founding a full-service digital agency in 2007, he then transitioned to digital tech products, co-founding back-to-back startups. Both companies, Reframed and Ricochet, were backed by investment from both angels and VCs, the latter being successfully acquired in December 2020. Prior to founding businesses, Kev got a degree in physics, worked freelance as a developer/programmer and online marketer, then went on to work at a few digital agencies in the Northeast.
So good morning to you, Kev.
Good to see you again.
It is. It's a funny story, isn't it? We caught up. When was that? It was at an event a year and a half ago.
It was, yeah, there was alcohol involved. I remember that.
Yeah.
But I can't remember what the actual event was. But I'd not seen you since we were 18, I think, 19. Yeah. Probably results day, A-levels.
Probably. I think we still played a bit of indoor hockey, didn't we?
Oh yeah, you did. You played with us.
In uni.
That was when I was fit.
Me too. But yeah, a long time ago. So it's good to get you on the podcast and hear a bit more about what's been going on.
Yeah.
So jump into the first question then. So when you were littler than 18, did you know what you wanted to be when you grew up?
I remember coming home from school one day after a class with Mrs. Murray, and we'd done our first science lesson. And I remember the experiment. She had 2 bits of metal, a ball and a ring, and you heat up the ball and it doesn't go through the ring. And I went home and I said, Mom, I want to be a scientist. I then went on to study physics. So that progressed for quite a bit. I didn't then become a scientist because I'm really bad at physics. But at least I found that out. So I had a plan from first year juniors to become a scientist.
Was it just physics, or was chemistry and biology of interest as well, or was it?
No, it ended up being physics just because my that was the best teacher at school. Like my biology teacher wasn't great, so I didn't. Yeah. I was all right at biology, and my chemistry teacher wasn't great, but like Mr. Ricketts was decent, if you remember him.
Yes. Well, actually, when I think back, I changed teachers to have Mr. Ricketts for year 10 and 11, and that was transformational in my grades. I went from average to I think I got an A in the end, but he made things really interesting, had really good stories, really practical ways of showing you things that
good
I used to like. The one,
all the difference.
Do you remember the one with, I can't even remember what, was it not a Van de Graaff generator or something, where you're holding on to 2 metallic prongs and you can't actually let go of it because the electricity's messing with the nerves and the messages to the brain, or the one that made your hair stand on end.
That's the Van de Graaff generator.
That's the one.
Holding on to the electrodes and winding the dynamo is probably you probably can't do that anymore.
Yeah. I think they got away with a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But so through school, then it's interesting you've had a plan and you've worked your way towards university to study physics. So was that still, did you get to uni and think, yes, I still like physics, or was that?
I got to uni and I didn't really have the grades, but they let me in anyway for some reason. And I very quickly found out that it was maths. It was the most mind-boggling maths. where they expected a level of knowledge going in that I didn't have. They handed out a sheet saying, this is what we expect you to already know. And I knew none of it, because it was all chemistry and I didn't do A-level chemistry.
Yeah, moles. Bloody hell, a mole is. I did A-level chemistry and I was like...
It's Avogadro's number.
Yeah.
I know that much.
It's like moles. Surely this is biology, moles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, so I muddled along. I got ill in my first year, at the end of first year, towards exam periods. I had undiagnosed Crohn's disease, and I was bad. So I didn't do great in the exams. And from then on, I knew I wasn't going to get a good degree. So I just kind of plodded along, and did the minimum. I mean, I ended up with a degree, but it wasn't the best quality or the hardest work I've ever done. But, had fun, met some lifelong friends, worked out. I'm not very good at physics.
Must be really painful, though, to do something for 3 years that just didn't float your boat, I suppose.
Yeah, but I shared a house with some good people.
Okay.
And got by. And I mean, being ill was quite distracting. Because I mean, for a long time, you don't know what's wrong. And there's blood coming out of you and you're wondering if it's cancer and all that kind of thing. You've got all that kind of scares to get through. And getting down to like 7 stone in weight, like under 7 stone, and just being really ill. And learn to deal with all of that. And then being diagnosed and getting put on meds and all of a sudden getting better. Like all of that was university life for me. Like I didn't really get to do all the partying. We played a lot of guitars and did a lot of singing, and drank a lot of tea. But my university time was spent getting well more than anything else.
You did well, I would say. You could have not completed the degree.
Yeah. And I've never really been motivated by grades. Like I'm more motivated by what I know, what I can do, rather than if I can pass an exam. So I was never really that bothered whether I got the grade or not, because I knew I'd do something. Like I've got skills, and my dad was self-employed from when I was young. So I mean, it's natural to then go into your own business. My brother's self-employed now as well. Like we both follow that format, as a lot of people like end up doing, if that's the model of business that they know.
Yeah, it's common, isn't it? What you see is less scary, isn't it?
Yeah, you could have been a teacher, and I could have joined the army. Nearly did. I was like, yeah, and I was like, oh no, you said I could come, and I have to change your mind. Would be Private Benjamin.
So what did you decide to do then once you'd finished physics, left uni?
I fell into geomatics engineering, which it was a company called IS Squared, and I was basically taking aerial photography and stitching it together. And it was the Get Mapping project, which became like the first bits of Google Maps, like with that early days of that. So I stitched together a lot of Wales. But that was
Wales the country, or
Wales the animal.
the country.
Oh, right, okay.
I thought you meant the animals.
Just checking.
So
How many whales are there?
You've got an aeroplane flying over Wales, take lots of photos, and then they send them to me, and you've got to take those photos and line them up with the OS maps, and make sure it all fits together, and then cut out all. Yeah. And then physically go along every road, cut it out where they overlap, so you get it like can't see the joins. And that was tremendously seasonal, because if there's cloud cover, you can't get the planes up. So a lot of the time was spent sitting. So I taught myself to program and build websites. I built my mum, because my mum and dad had properties in Spain at the time. And I built a quick rentals website for them, which generated inquiries. And someone saw it and said, "Do you want to build one for me?" So I said, "Yeah." And took redundancy and started building websites for the French rentals industry, a guy called Tony Tidswell. So that was my first business. So 2 years out of uni, doing French rental inquiries, and being a really, really bad programmer. But people would just phone me up and say, "Can you do this?" And I'd just go, "Yeah." And then I very quickly look up how to do it and mash something together. And we did all right, and then got stomped on by a big competitor. They just refused to pay their bill. So we all went our separate ways, and I got a proper job working at Visualsoft, who are now massive. This was 16 years ago. I just saw that Neil Innes, who started just after me, he's still there. And he's been there 15 years, so that makes sense. Worked there a couple of years. The commute was massive, all the way down to Stockton. And then finally found a job in Newcastle at B Group, which was just the best experience. It was a lot of young people being good at their jobs and having fun and doing a lot of drinking and partying. And that's where I met Joe York, who features from that point on in my life considerably. Up until recently, actually, but we'll get to that. She was working in the B Group, being a designer. I was a developer. She left to work at Mobius, and I'm terrible at being employed. I'm not very good at having a boss. And so I worked there for about a year, then got back in touch with Jo and said, "Do you want to start a business?" And she said, "Yes." That's as much thought went into it. So we started a business. We built a website, hired a room, which was it was about the size of a desk. We could fit a desk in this room, and if anyone needed to go to the loo, you had to stand up to get the door out. It was in the post office on Pink Lane. And that was our first office. And we started building websites on November 1st, 2007, I think, which is the day the FTSE collapsed, the big crash. It was our fault. You're welcome. Yeah. And then we built websites through a massive recession in the Northeast for people who we wanted to build cool stuff. That's what we wanted to do. And as with all web development, you end up arguing about the color of the background. That's your main argument. People want the logo to be bigger and central. Those are the arguments they have. And it wasn't, we did all right. We hired staff, learned a fair amount about business. But we were just frustrated because we wanted to build cool stuff. That was the aim. We had a whiteboard full of ideas that we couldn't build because we didn't have the time or the money. And then Ignite came to Newcastle, the Ignite Accelerator, and Joe had met Paul a few times. Paul Smith, who at the time was running Ignite. And we arranged to meet him. So we went to Pink Lane coffee shop, and I had I've been thin and pale for quite a lot of my life, being ill, and I had long hair. I didn't have a beard at the time, and Joe took me into the coffee shop to meet Paul, and Paul thought that you just dragged someone off the street because he needed a co-founder. Like at the time, I looked like a tramp. And I mean, we told our story. We'd been working together for a number of years by then. I pitched 3 ideas to him that were just off the top of our heads, and he figured there's a team here, like, so let's put them on Ignite and see if they come out with something. So we did. So we ended Ignite with a PDF of a picture of an idea, whereas a lot of the other teams had like fully fledged businesses. And we learned more about business in the next 3 months than we had in the previous 5 years or whatever it was. It was intense. It was absolutely brilliant. Like, it was life-changingly brilliant. And we created Reframed, which was exactly what we wanted to do. We built something cool. It was a mashup of Twitter and live streams, so you could watch tweets back at the time. So you could go back on a YouTube video and see the tweets that occurred at that time. And it, like, I'd automated the marketing process. It was all like, it was flashy. We were having ridiculous meetings with Twitter. We ended up having meetings at 10 Downing Street. It was nuts. It was a crazy, crazy time. We didn't have a business model, but we had a cool business that people wanted to talk about. And then, I mean, we raised money, investments, yada, yada, yada. We got on that train. We got our investment strategy wrong, but none of us knew anything about investment. So I can do hours on investment strategy now. And we hired an amazing team. And then got conned, essentially. Fake investor, didn't have any money. I've dined out on the story of fake investor for years now. I can do like almost a 20-minute stand-up routine on that particular part of my life. But what it came down to is we didn't do our due diligence. I mean, he told us his middle name was Boudica. And that is, Godfather was Bannatyne, Duncan Bannatyne. Like, it was a ludicrous setup, but we needed the investment. And he was saying all the right things. And as much as we didn't like him, everything felt like it was falling into place. And the less we looked hard at it, the better it was. And then our friend Tristan came to see us and said, this guy hasn't paid any of his bills. Like, yeah, of course he hasn't. And I did some research, and he had CCJs under his name. He had no money. He was living in a house that he didn't own, like £70,000 house that he didn't own. He was no one. He wasn't the ex-Google person that he's putting himself out to be. He wasn't the investor. Yeah. I don't think that his wife that we were communicating with on Slack was his wife. I think it was just him on a different account. It was all just a mess. So this was on a Friday when we found all this out. We didn't have investment. I thought, right, I've got about 3 months to turn this around. So went in on the Monday, told the team, look, investment's fallen through. We've got other people involved. Like we might be able to turn this around. By the end of that week, we'd realized that a lot of the money we were counting on was owed by this guy. So once we voided all that, we realized we had a week of runway left. Like, we were done. So back in on the next Monday, tell the team we're done. Like, that's it. Luckily, I mean, we'd been transparent with the team, and all the way through, they had access to the finances. They knew exactly how much runway we had, all that kind of thing. So they had rightly been looking for other jobs, and not mentioning it. So within hours, they all had jobs because we'd hired really well. like we had a solid team, so they were all looked after. Me and Joe just took a hit on we had IP in the offering, like we were paying for patents and all this kind of nonsense, which was pointless really. But we covered that bill. So we lost a few grand personally, and had a really solid anecdote to tell for a couple of years. And also, I mean, the investors could look at him and say, yeah, like it was his fault, but it wasn't. Like we didn't have a business model. Like we weren't making enough money to sustain the business. We were going to have to raise again, and we didn't. Our investment strategy was wrong. So the entire thing was done. So me and Joe licked our wounds for 18 months. We started building what was the next iteration of Reframed, just from her house, called Watch With Me. And it was decent tech. Like it was all right, but it wasn't going to go anywhere. We were, I don't think either of us admitted it, but we were sore, and it was, we'd slogged, and we just needed some time. So we built that for a bit, and we put it about the place, and we got some users, and it went all right. And then Paul Smith, who featured earlier in the tale, who ran Ignite, got in touch and said, "Do you want to make some money?" And we both like, we were like, "Yeah, all right." And he wanted to go into business with us. So we got in a room and we decided how much money we wanted to make. That was the starting point. What we would have to sell in order to make that much money, and who would buy it. And then workshopped what we could sell them for that price. It was like, because when we all had families, we all had mortgages. We couldn't put ourselves in a situation where we were like eating ramen noodles out the back of a car whilst funding our business. Like we had to start making money straight away selling this thing. So we had an idea, and it was sales tools. And that afternoon, we got in touch with the team upstairs, guys from Nebula Labs, don't know if you know them, great team. Pitched the idea to them. They said they wanted it. Said, right, we'll do it. And we tested the process from that afternoon over the weekend to see if it worked. And it did. It's like, right, we've got something. Let's go. So we built it, got investment. It was quite nice that time because I wasn't CEO, and Paul has all the best contacts. So raising was far easier that time because I didn't do it. Because raising is the worst part of business. It's horrible. And then, yeah, we built it, pivoted a few times, and then launched a product into a pandemic. we launched a sales product into a pandemic, and everyone's sales team went home, not knowing what the world was going to look like. So we had a product that looked great and might have had product market fit, but we couldn't find out. Pivoted really fast, built a free tool, browser extension, the hope of creating a market that we could then sell into. And we ran out of time. So we sold the business to a company, Cognism, who, I mean, the product's still there. It's really solid tech. Like, I didn't write a single line of code in that. Craig Cooper and Mark, oh no. I've forgotten his name. I can't tell him to watch this. Craig and Mark built an amazing, robust bit of tech that was like we could have sold it for an absolute ton, had we the leverage. But we sold it, and it didn't make us rich. That's as far as I'll go. But it's there. And then I was footloose and fancy free, in a pandemic, in lockdowns. So spent some time working out what I want to do next. Thinking I'm not really employable, because I'm a generalist. Like it's all C-level jobs. It's like I'm not a programmer anymore. I'm a manager. So I put a message out on LinkedIn saying I was looking for an opportunity, and had 2 meetings a day for 3 weeks. It was nuts. It was really quite I was really surprised. It was great. I turned down a lot of startups because it was all a lot of 21-year-olds starting new businesses who wanted me involved. I'm like, no, because I would just be in charge. Like, everything would be my problem. Happy to do non-exec and mentor work and all that kind of thing. But got introduced to Peter and Angela at Sub 10, who are actual grown-ups and really good at their jobs. And were just missing like my skill set. Like, I said no to them at first because it was technically a pre-seed startup, and I didn't want to do that. But the more I thought about it, it's like I could see what I needed to do for the next 18 months. Like, I was going to go in, I was going to launch a product, and that's what I do. Like, that's what I'm good at. So we talked about it, and I got involved, and it's brilliant. Like, it's ideal. I mean, it's unusual not working with Jo. Like, having been in business with her for 15 years, 14 years, something like that. Like, I spent as much time with Jo as I have any member of my family over that amount of time. So that's weird. But it doesn't feel like having a boss. Like, I'm in charge of my own time. I can hire and all that kind of thing. I've helped them with their raise, because obviously I've got experience raising and they haven't. So doing all the financial forecasts and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, we launched. We've got an MVP of free safeguarding content. I've done lots of safeguarding training in my time, because I've been governing all this kind of thing. And it's all dull and takes ages. But this is 4 10-minute sections, which is engaging, is really good. So yeah, that's solid. That brings me up to date.
So it's so with Subtel 10, tell us a bit more about that. So you mentioned that it's engaging content, sort of less than 10 minutes. Tell us a bit more.
So Angela is she was a teacher, and has all of that training, and has seen that very few of the principles of teaching and actual learning and education go into training, like for work. Like, people, it's often a tick box exercise where you do an hour training or a day-long training and then nothing for a year. So, like, unless, like, take first aid, for example, you really hope that you find an injury the next day, because that's when you actually remember everything. But 6 months later, yeah, you've done the training, but you can't actually remember it. So it's using actual pedagogy, like actual, like real, the science behind learning, and applying it to things that are important, like safeguarding, where you need to get that right. Like you need to actually take care of people and look after them and take action if something is wrong. Not just with regard to kids, but with everyone. So we have put that out for free, because, like, safeguarding is important, and like we also want to get our name out there. And then we'll go into the code of conduct side of things. So we'll do what we're doing, anti-money laundering training, and equality diversity training, like that kind of thing. And that's where we'll start charging people for different units and that kind of thing. So I'm building a learning record system.
Cool.
Which, yeah, I mean, I hadn't intended on actually being the dev when I went in, but we're a small business, and I can. So rather than let's wait until after investment before we start spending the money on hiring people. So I can knock together an MVP. So we've done that, and I'm happy with it. I mean, I've built it off the back of Nebula Labs work and Codification's work, who did the original setup. I've mostly just removed bits to take it down to an actual minimum viable product, rather than it being this behemoth which is distracting and people won't know what to press. So yeah, that's all launched and ready, and the raise should go through within the next month, fingers crossed, maybe month and a half, and then we're hiring.
Exciting.
It is. It's that. Do you think that's the? When you said you build products, you launch products, is that the most exciting part of business for you? Do you think, or is it getting involved in lots of different things, wearing different hats? What would you say?
Yeah, I like being involved in lots of different things. I like using all of my skills. I like people, programming is very it closed off. It's just you and a machine. It's not it's not where I like to be in a business. I can do it, but I much prefer the communication side of things, actually talking to people, because all businesses are about people. When it comes down to it, all decisions are made by people. And those relationships are tremendously important.
It's a good, we're not going to go into stereotypes, are we? But in essence, the end user, or it's all a human, isn't it? Like you say. So it's, if you don't get that right, you're not shut off in a side office somewhere. It's like, no, I'm just writing code. I don't talk to humans. That's someone else's job. You can, there's a disconnect, and they're about getting things done in the right way. Yeah.
And everything that you're putting out there is communication. Your user interface, all interactions have to be user focused rather than company focused. So, and I mean, I'm not a UX expert or anything like that. I need to hire someone to do that. But it's all important. I'm quite enjoying management, even though I don't have a team at the moment. I thoroughly enjoyed working with Craig and Mark at the last job, because they didn't require managing. So I made my job far easier. Meant I could just protect them from all of all the requests, just stand in the way and be their filter. Which is, it's good to let brilliant people do their thing and own their work. So
that's what everyone should have in a manager, isn't it? Trust in someone's abilities
and get out the way and let them get on with it.
Well, that's why I'm constantly I prefer hiring good people, because then you remove management overhead. I would much prefer to hire people who can do the job and love the job and pay them well, rather than hire someone really cheap and have to stand over their shoulder and watch all of their work and all of that. Why? Let's hire good people. I'm sure that there's a corporate responsibility stuff once you get to a certain size, where you should bring in apprentices and that kind of thing, and help people through. But as a small business, hire good people.
Yeah, otherwise it's just you. I think you you lengthen the time frame of where you could be, hiring someone that you're training on the way, instead of just, like you say, this is worth investing in properly.
Except when we were running the agency, like there was me, Joe, 2 staff, and we'd constantly be offered apprentices. And we did take one once, and it was just so much work for us. Like, we didn't have time as a 4-person team to look after like an extra fifth of the business. Like it took so much. So yeah, I think big businesses should absolutely bring on apprentices. But I can't yet.
Is there anything else we need to talk about, Kev?
Anything else we need to talk? I don't know. I've rambled through my story.
Good. For all the different bits.
For quite some time. Anything else we need to talk about? Not that I can think of.
Awesome. Quick fire round then.
Yes. So, question number 1. If your life was made into a movie, which song would have to be on the soundtrack?
Oh, that's hard. Because I mean, I could just go like a song that I love, like Mr. Jones' Count Crows, Mr. Potter's Lullaby, like anything from this Desert Life album. That's hard. Let's go with something from the Labyrinth soundtrack by David Bowie.
Me and my little boy sing that, you remind me of the Babe all the time.
Yes. Yeah.
And I haven't seen the movie since I was...
No, we have to subject you to it.
Watch it again. It's brilliant. It stands up.
It's terrifying in terms of the safeguarding elements of it, but yeah, it's great. Apart from that,
yeah, because I think she was 14 when she filmed it.
Yeah, it's terrifying. Anyway, question number 2: what is the most overrated product out on the market?
I thought these meant to be quick fire. I've got to give this some thought. Let's say Facebook, most overrated product.
There you go, Mr. Zuckerberg, if you're listening.
Take 2 of them.
I was thinking of the electric forks you can get for eating spaghetti that just turn. Help you scoop up the spaghetti, but totally useless.
I don't think anyone rates them.
No.
Maybe not, just me.
So we know what to get James for Christmas. Question number 3, James.
Question number 3. So you get arrested with no explanation. What would your friends and family assume you have done?
Hacked something, most probably. Or defended someone. I've done martial arts most of my life. So might assume that I've managed to get into a fight of some sort. I mean, I've never been in a fight, but I can.
That's a good answer.
Yep. Cool. So if we could get in the DeLorean, take you back to 18-year-old you, and you have a chat, because that would be physically possible. I was trying to be all physicsy because he's all physics, isn't he? What advice would you give to you?
Don't change anything. Like it goes well. I think that's it. I mean, it's obviously had hard times, but it all ends up good.
Yeah. Beauty in its simplicity.
Yep.
Yeah, I like that.
Awesome.
So if you want to find out more about Kev's latest project he's involved with, you can go to their website, which is sub-10.co.uk.
Yeah, that's us.
Oh, we've really enjoyed catching up.
Thank you.
That's been a pleasure.
Thanks everyone for listening. Check out all the show notes at inspirationnorth.com. Join us again for the next episode when we'll be chatting to another inspirational person. If you like this, subscribe and tell your friends. If you didn't like this, subscribe anyway and tell everybody.